You're listening to 8158 Stories of Sacrifice, where we honor the bravery of the first responders and the families who stand behind them. Real people, real stories, real heroes. This is 8158.
Welcome back to 8158 Stories of Sacrifice. Today's episode is one that hits close to home, not just for the families of first responders, but for anyone who's ever loved someone in a dangerous profession. Our guest today is Maria, a proud and resilient mom whose son Joseph was truly born to be a firefighter. From riding fire trucks as a kid to becoming the youngest lieutenant in Atlanta, Joseph's journey has been nothing short of remarkable. But behind the uniform, behind the heroism, is a mom who spent the last 20 years learning how to live with pride and fear every single time her son heads out on shift. Maria opens up about the highs, the heartbreaks, and everything in between, from losing another son in a tragic accident to celebrating holidays on off days to quietly carrying the mental load that comes with loving someone in the line of duty. This conversation is raw, real, and a powerful reminder of the sacrifices made by those who stand behind our everyday heroes. Let's welcome Maria.
Podcast Stories of Sacrifice. Today we have a special guest. As usual, all of our guests are very special to us. This one is very meaningful. She has a son who is a firefighter, and we definitely thank her and him for his service and her sacrifice for having to go through all of the things that she has to go through as a mother, dealing with having a son as a firefighter. And today we introduce Maria. Welcome, Maria.
Hello, thanks for having me. Getting it.
You are very welcome, and we definitely appreciate and we are honored to have you on our podcast to talk about your story. And it's definitely, I believe it's going to help a lot of mothers out there that are dealing with the same thing that you are, because, it seems like a lot of mothers feel like they're the only ones, and they're not. They're not alone. Just like our first responders, when they're dealing with their traumas, they're not alone.
Well, hopefully they don't feel that way. Hopefully they reach out for help if they need it.
Exactly, and that's the hope for this episode, is just to get them to reach out and to either get their stories out or to find somebody to talk to, just to have that support system.
Well, yeah, it could be a matter of, their mental health is really important, and unfortunately it's teetering sometimes on the edge, which is sad.
Right. And a lot of times, like the first responders, the parents or the family members of the first responders are often not thought of in that process. And you don't think about the mental health of what they're going through at that time.
Yeah, a lot of worrying. Especially when they're on their shift, You're proud, but of course you worry. Can't help but worry.
Yeah, especially being a mother, I know with my mother, she always saw us as her babies, no matter how old we got.
Right.
And unfortunately, we lost her in 2004.
I'm sorry.
She was 48 or 49, I believe.
Ooh, cancer?
Yes, she had metastatic lung cancer.
Oh, sorry.
So I'm pretty much approaching the age that she was when she passed away. So it's been about 20 years now. Well, 2004, so a little over 20 years now.
So it's always in the back of your mind that it could happen to you, or...
Yeah.
I mean, it was a genetic thing, or did she smoke or anything, or...
She was a smoker. She was a heavy smoker, and she smoked ever since she was 13 years old. And
it's hard to quit when you're, it's part of your life, part of your everyday. It's hard to quit.
Yeah, yeah, it is. When you get started on that stuff, it's hard to get off of it.
Yeah, should be more help for that too.
I wish there was. I really
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
And
But unfortunately, my grandmother, she wasn't a smoker, and she died from lung cancer as well.
you know, it
About
happens just from being around,
yes,
or you have a mutation, you're born with, and it just develops over time. It's unfortunate.
yes. We believe she got hers from her line of work because she was a waitress at a diner, and back then, there's a lot of
Coffee
people
and a
smoke.
cigarette.
Yep, a lot of people smoked at diners.
Yeah,
There
a lot
was
of
no
people
regulation
smoked
on it.
everywhere. Yeah,
Yep.
it's too
So
bad.
yeah, she was a very beautiful person, and it was a sad loss for all of us, for her and my mother. But I mean, we live with it every day. We thank God that we were blessed with their presence.
True. Yeah, she
But we
was
know
around.
they're looking after us now, so
Yeah, yeah.
it means a
I'm
lot.
sorry.
Appreciate that.
A lot of
So
firefighters smoke too.
yeah, that's kind of ironic when you
It
think
is.
about it.
Well, I think it relaxes them. I know my son smoked for a while, and
Hmm.
I think now he just does the patch
The
or the
vape.
pod, the vape. No, not the vape. The pods that they stick in their mouth.
Oh, the pouches.
Pouches. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, for chewing.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think it gives them some, uh, like the nicotine gives them a kind of a boost of energy and calms them down at the same time. I'm not sure, but
Yeah,
I don't know if it's any safer or, you know, he can still
yeah,
do stuff with it in his mouth,
yeah.
unlike a cigarette.
There's still some risks of cancer, like excuse me, facial cancer
True,
with
gum
those
cancer.
of that
Yeah,
nicotine.
yeah.
So I mean, at least he's not smoking, but it's still a
Well,
hard time.
we go to the station when we're in town and have dinner, and a few of them smoke, and and I understand it's calms them down,
Hmm.
and they probably figure, well, I'm breathing carcinogenics anyway. What the heck?
Right.
Unfortunately, but now
Some of it. Yeah.
they're keeping up with keeping their bunker gear clean and their helmets, and
Right.
there's products out there now that hopefully help. There hasn't been the long term research yet, but hopefully they help.
Right. So on that question, is that when we did our pre-interview, is that what you
Mhm.
meant by the cancer will get me before the fire will?
That's what my son has told me. Yes, he'll probably end up dying of cancer.
Okay.
He's been in the
Now,
service
fine.
since he was 16, so
Okay.
20 years. And I think back in those early days when he was a junior and everything else, they still fought fire. It may have been a burn, an intentional burn, but for training purposes, they still were consuming the fumes and everything, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
fingers crossed.
Yeah. Let's hope that that's not the outcome.
Exactly.
Um, so I'm going to kind of get into a little bit of background, and can you take us back to when Joseph was young, and when did you first realize he was born to be a firefighter?
Well, it's kind of cliche, but every Christmas, birthday, he wanted trucks, fire trucks. The louder, the better. We probably went to every station within a 50-mile radius, and he just loved it. And Halloween, every year, he was a firefighter. Um, and at 16, you hear the kids, can I go get my license or permit? He wanted to join junior firefighters. So Of course,
Wow.
you can't say no, especially when you know it's his being. So, um, yeah, we could tell early that he was okay, a born firefighter. I
Yeah.
mean, we don't have it in my family. It's not like he was surrounded around, growing up and everything. My
Yeah.
dad wasn't a firefighter, or his dad wasn't a firefighter. It was just a calling. That's, I guess, what you would call it. So
Right.
you got to let them do what they want. They're going to
Well,
do it anyway when they turn 18. So what's 2 years?
right.
And he
Right.
made some great friends, and his instructors were fabulous. He's still friends with them today. They keep in
Yeah.
touch. So one of those things that was meant to be.
Right. I know we had a guest on here who was pretty much raised around the fire department. I don't know if you'd listened to the podcast yet, but Anthony Crane, he uh, wasn't born around firefighters. He was living with his grandmother at the time, and he used to always watch the fire trucks
Is he the
as they left
volunteer?
from school. Yeah, he was a volunteer firefighter for 25 years. And that's how he got his start. Is one of the firefighters invited him over at 4 years old to help him wash the truck, and then he kind of progressed from there.
Yeah, you get hooked. I think I have seen it. He was hurt, I believe, with the explosion, or is that someone else?
Yes, yes, that's
Okay,
Anthony.
yeah,
Yeah,
I watched it. Yeah, it's sad. Um, well, you, what a better feeling than helping other people,
yeah,
and
yeah,
especially even the volunteers. Some of the careers say, oh, but they're just as brave and they've trained just as much. I don't see anything wrong with it. I think
right,
they should be honored to do
exactly.
that, to get up and run out the building. Even when Joe was a junior and he would have a pager, you know, he'd run out that door, and sometimes I don't know which was worse, him driving there or the scene
Right.
when he got there. So, but he's still going at it. So I'm proud.
Yeah, it's got to be a good feeling to know that your son is doing something that sacrificing himself to help other
Exactly.
people. Even though
Well,
it's a scary situation.
yeah, and either you have it or you don't. People are doing good things in other ways, and
Mhm.
may not be getting credit for it, but they should. And firefighters and police and all first responders, deserve recognition and help with mental health.
Exactly.
I think there should be some program to get them therapy, or because a lot of times they don't want to bring it up. They look like a baby or something in front of their brothers and stuff
Right.
at the station. But it's commendable to get it out and talk about it too, I think.
Right. That
And hope.
that that's where the stigma comes from. The
Right.
bravado, and
Yeah.
the worry that if I say something, then they'll
They're
think
gonna
something's wrong with me, and then I won't have my
call me
job
a.
anymore. Yeah.
Well, hopefully it doesn't go that far, but they don't want to be called a wimp, or or a softy or something like that. You know, my son doesn't show any signs of it, but doesn't mean there isn't any going on.
Right. There could be some compounding traumas,
Sure. Yeah,
and they
especially
come
after
out later in
20.
life.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
they do come out later in life,
they
unfortunately.
need help all along the way.
Right.
Yeah. And a lot of them work second jobs. He's got a business, and hopefully that's where he can vent and clear his mind.
Right.
He
Right.
works with big machinery and excavators, and hopefully it's time out in the woods or open property that he's clearing, that he can clear his head too. So
Yeah. So, can you tell me what it was like with him growing up, being so passionate about wanting to be a firefighter?
um you know, taking him to the stations and, giving him the presents he wanted and the costumes he wanted. It wasn't any big deal, but I knew he couldn't wait till he was 16 to go and, really experience what it's like to be a firefighter. So
there was no doubt in your mind that that's what he was going to do. That was going
oh,
to be his career.
no doubt, no doubt. You know, um, of course, he had a learning problem. He was very dyslexic in school.
Okay.
So he had an IEP, so he's allowed extra time for tests, which he needed to take his EMT test. He took it twice, he failed. And the third time I went back and through the state, he was entitled to more time. He passed it. So I don't
Okay.
know whether it's the pressure, of having to speed through it. But thank goodness he passed. So,
Right.
I mean, he studied, he went to people's houses for classes, and, he really wanted it. So, and it's required pretty much now, I think, in every department. I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure it's required,
Right.
or at least try to get it.
So, what were some of your feelings when he became a junior firefighter? Were you excited or nervous or a little bit of both? Or
Well, a little bit of both. I was proud of him. He was in the junior program, and then he got picked for the county to go to extra training. A couple of kids were picked from around the county, and he was chosen. So he did that, and he was an Eagle Scout, so he did scouts, but he did let it slack for a while when he was doing his junior program. And
right.
then I think about 17 and a half, he realized, oh my God, I got to do my project. So, because once you're 18, you're, SOL. So he actually made benches for the local fire department. They're called rehab benches, where it's slanted in the back so they could sit with their tanks on, and recuperate. And he designed them, and, he was very proud of them, and they still have them.
Oh,
They're
wow.
still in use. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we worked like 2 days at the station building them, and they were bolted, and, they're sturdy. They'll probably last forever.
Oh, I imagine.
Treated wood and stuff. So
Oh man, they'll last a long time.
I hope so. The tanks might scar them up a little bit, but,
Yeah. A little
they'll
bit of
be
wear and
there.
tear. It's okay.
Yeah. A couple of gouges never hurt anything.
Yeah. It
So,
builds character. Well used.
exactly. He didn't get a patent or anything. He could have, I think, but,
Yeah.
become too busy. So he's
So
worked at, I'm sorry.
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. No,
Well,
you
he's
go ahead.
worked at different financial levels of firehouses. His first
Okay.
one, he was kind of spoiled. It was in Virginia, outside of DC, and they had money. He experienced quite the, equipment and the trucks and everything. And then we moved to Georgia, and he ended up working for like an inner city,
Okay.
which to him, I think, after being spoiled, was a challenge.
Oh,
Duct taping the trucks, holding your breath that you're going to get to the fire and stuff. So, but he hung in there, he stayed.
that's
And
good.
he got a little pressure. He was the youngest lieutenant ever at that city.
Oh wow. So can you tell me what goes through your mind when he leaves for a shift? Do you ever sleep peacefully, or when he goes on shift?
Well, unfortunately, I live in New Mexico now, and he's still in Georgia. So, but I always contact him every time he's on shift and say, I hope you're having a good shift and you get to sleep all night and stuff like that, just to hear from him.
Yeah.
So he says, yeah, shift is great. And, training today and this and that. And so, I just need to be in contact with him, just like once a shift. I don't want to
Right.
bother him, but, and of course I worry.
Right. You
It's
want to know what he's
natural.
doing.
Of course, yeah. Anybody related to a firefighter or a police officer or any first responder, of course you're going to worry while they're at work.
Exactly.
Doesn't help any, but, you know, I think it's just kind of like a pat on his back or something, just to let him know we're there.
Yeah. Support.
Right, exactly. Unfortunately, he's not married yet, or he's too busy all the time, but, someday. And she'll be the same way, I'm sure.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah.
You work.
Well, I'm sure you know it, yeah, firsthand. But, yeah. He knows we're
Now,
proud.
now you mentioned that Joseph doesn't talk much about his job because he doesn't want to scare you. Do you
Exactly.
wish he would share more, or is it easier not to know?
Well, um, I think it's better not to know, personally.
Yeah.
He's told me about a couple of incidents when he was young, and that was kind of enough. Showing up to an accident. He lost his brother to a car accident, so um, I think I'm better off not knowing,
Yeah.
because I would probably go there and stop him. But, I don't want to be that mom.
Right. Kind of want to let him be his own man, and
Exactly. Yeah, you
know,
have to. You know, can't only cuddle a kid so long,
yeah.
and hope you raised them right so they make the right decisions. And I think he does.
Right.
I always say
Sounds
be
like
safe. I follow a lot of departments on TikTok, and I always say stay safe. And they always say thank you every
yeah.
single time I get a response. So
Right.
hopefully it helps.
Yeah. I mean, just them knowing that there's people out there that love and support them for what they do.
Right.
It
Yeah. Got their
counts.
back.
Yeah.
6. Yeah.
You know, and that's kind
Say
of like what we're doing with this podcast is it's showing our first responders that we do care and we do have their back, and if they need help, we're here for them.
right. And it'd be great if there was somebody at the station or, just somebody on their downtime that they could talk to, but I don't think that's fully involved yet,
Yeah.
you know.
Hopefully in the
Unfortunately.
future, those things will change.
Right. And here, when my son comes on, I hope he, can spill or be honest about how his emotional health is, because it's
Yeah.
better to let it out,
Right.
you know. I had my
Yeah.
days.
Yeah, I imagine you do. I mean, this is the place to do it. It's a safe place.
Right.
There's nothing you want out there. We won't put it out there, but if that's something you want to get out so that it'll help somebody else,
Yeah.
that's something that should be told so that others can hear and know that they're not alone. And
Right.
we're finding that out far too often that they're not alone. So it's
Well,
better to just let it out instead of suffer in silence.
yeah. And it's nice that, that the firefighters have family that when they're around, they'll come and have dinner, or, a lot of them have, all first responders, a lot of the families show up to the station. You
Yeah.
know, there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's great. And the kids get to see what their dad does, not on a call, but and
Right.
I'm sure they're proud, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't exactly remember, but my dad was a firefighter. I was about 2 years old, and I do remember the picture that they took of me sitting in the fire truck
I'm
with his
sure you
helmet
still
on.
have them. I hope,
I don't have that picture,
No?
unfortunately. I wish I knew where that was. kind of got lost when my mom passed away, and
Oh,
I
that's too
wasn't there
bad.
to retrieve it. So yeah, that that picture would be here, right here in my office. Uh,
So you only remember that far back as two? I mean, did
yeah,
what?
I was pretty young when my dad was a firefighter, so and he got hurt early on before I got too much older, and then after that, him and my mom split up. So I really don't have
Oh,
any recollection of any of that stuff. So
well, I'm sorry about that. It's hard on a marriage, too.
yeah,
Very hard.
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know which is worse, the divorce rate or the suicide rate. But it needs to be changed. It needs to help,
yeah, yeah.
and
I
that's
think
why.
they kind of go together,
Yeah,
and communication is huge.
right.
Communication is very big between partners that are in that situation.
Yeah, and they're afraid to tell you what actually happens because they don't want to scare you. Like my
Right,
son.
right,
I'm sure it happens across the board.
right,
Unfortunately. So they hold it in, and it gets worse.
right.
So,
So now, when Joseph was living around you, and he was a first responder, how were the holidays like? How
uh,
did you handle celebrating those during that time?
well, like just this past year, he worked Thanksgiving and Christmas. So you just kind of have to accept it and have it a different day, because usually he would come out and we'd go there, or as he was growing up, we would have it another day. It's no big deal. He's still celebrating.
Right.
And, I think they have their dinners at the station. They all get together and cook a turkey and, have a meal there, which is awesome, I think.
Right.
And the families come. So, yeah, I mean, you just have to adjust around it. It's not, you know, it's nothing major. It's just, you get used to it, I guess,
Right.
and you accept it.
It's part of the job.
Yeah, yeah. And if you think ahead, you can always put in for the day off, but you got to be first. You got to do
Right.
it like a year ahead of time. And since he doesn't have families, I think sometimes he works it for them, especially Christmas.
Right.
I mean, he doesn't have kids. I'm sorry, a wife and kids.
Yeah, in the area.
So right, so he understands, and I mean, his dad used to work a lot. He would have to go in on shift. He was a satellite controller, so it was 24/7. So
Hmm.
he remembers getting up at 4 before dad went to work, or on Christmas morning. So I think he was kind of used to that,
Right.
just adjusting.
Right.
Hopefully, I mean, what can he says, can't do anything about it. It is what it is, and it's all good. So
It's all good.
it's all good. He says it a lot.
It's
So
all good.
yeah, how was shift? Oh, not too bad. It's all good. Just for me, I think.
Just
So
to make you feel better about
yeah, and
what
I
you're doing.
I saw like a video the other day of how first responders say I love you a lot. It's true.
Yes.
They do. It just happens because you never know.
Yeah. You never know when your last day might be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely understand that. Um, so over the years, has it gotten any easier for you, or do you still hold your breath when he's on shift?
Well, I think now that he's a lieutenant, I don't know if it makes it a little easier, you know, because he'll still run into a fire. He loves it.
Yeah.
So if he's the officer on the scene, you very well can't do that. You have to be. But I know he still gears up and runs in. So, you know, like he'll say, it is what it is. They say that's not good, but it's all good. You know, of course, I can't dwell about it. I really can't, because I could get into a deep place, after losing my son, and I can't.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to dwell on that because it'll just kind of bring you down.
Yeah,
Get you
exactly.
in
You
a dark
think,
place.
overthink. Yeah. So, and I appreciate being able to talk about it. It helps.
Yeah, I could see it still wears on you a little bit, and just know that we're proud of what your son is doing, and we're proud and thankful for you for being his support.
Thank you. Yeah, and his dad supports him. So,
Yeah, it's awesome to have a good family to have that backing and that support because
uh,
that's what our first responders need.
yeah. And it's sad if they don't. You know,
Yeah.
I might have to adopt some. Just to say, I hope you get to sleep all night. Heaven forbid you say the Q word.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So, on moving on here, Joseph has accomplished so much in his career, from earning uh, top certifications. Sorry about that. Certifications to becoming an instructor. What are you most proud of his
um,
accomplishments?
that he always strives to be better.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, he's done them all. He'll go to classes and training on his days off and get a hotel, and he trained at the Georgia training instructors for police and firefighters. He volunteered there for years, and then they finally made him an instructor.
Oh
So,
wow.
yeah, proud of that. And they don't get paid well, so he had to start, a second income. Unfortunately, took away from the instructor. But
Yeah.
if they were to call him up and say, "Joe, can you be here?" He'd be there in a flash.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean.
Oh yeah. And he's gotten an award for his department. I'm sorry, his crew, for saving 2 kids in a fire.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and that was pretty cool. DC, they recognized him, gave him a certificate, and so yeah, he's proud of that.
We will return after this quick ad break.
The William H. Bill Butler Jr. Foundation is on a mission to honor first responders and support those who serve. We provide scholarships for families who have lost a hero in the line of duty, offer second chances to juvenile offenders who are working to rebuild their future, and help new recruits pursuing careers as first responders. Through generous donations and the sale of merchandise, we're building a community that uplifts, empowers, and creates lasting impact. You can be a part of this mission as well. Visit 8158podcast.com to donate or shop today. Together, we can support those who serve, honor those we've lost, and give hope to those who need it most.
Yeah, he's proud of that. And I think that's what they strive for, is to help survive,
Yeah.
make somebody else's life better, second chance, or just being there.
Right. He was definitely dedicated to his job.
Yes, he is. But it's funny, we were on a trip last year, and he always says, "Well, I own a company." And I said, "Joe, tell me you're a firefighter." He goes, "Because then they always want something. They want me to do something for them, like lift their
Yeah.
suitcases," which he does anyway, or something like that,
Right.
because they're known for being there to help. So, which that probably sounded bad, but just like, come over, can you help me carry this, or stuff like
Mhm.
that, which he would do.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely don't want to take our first responders for granted, yet, if we need help, they'll be
Right,
there to help us.
right. It kind of goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
So
I know you kind of mentioned him going from a big city to a smaller department. What was it like when he made that transition? Uh, did you feel any kind of sense of relief or anything like that?
big time, especially if they didn't have the great upper management that needed to keep things in service, and it was a matter of safety, and that I didn't like at all.
Yeah.
My son's willing to sacrifice his life. Command can make sure that there's a minimal risk of him getting hurt
Right.
with the equipment and the engines, and just period. So I was happy, actually.
Right.
I was relieved, you know, and now he gets to sleep most nights.
Right.
It isn't 24/7 like it was at the inner city.
When you're in a top position, your your command, your first priority should be to your crew and the
Exactly.
safety of their
Taking,
lives. I know a good friend of mine. He was a firefighter. He was an engine boss, and that was his primary focus was the safety of his crew.
so he pumps the truck, he drives and did the pumper, or is that
He
different?
was, he was an engine boss. He basically directed the firefighters what to do.
Oh, okay. Like a battalion?
Yeah,
Oh,
like that.
okay. Sorry.
This was a wildlands firefighting, so it's kind of like a little different. Uh, but he was in charge of the crew, and his primary focus was his crew,
Of course.
safety, security of his crew,
Yeah.
knowing where they were, what they were doing. They're getting off task, he'd get them back on task, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, it kind of comes with rank. I'm getting an echo. Kind of comes with rank. I mean, you have to, if you test for it, you have to be prepared to take on that responsibility. So
Right.
he's tested for captain, but he missed it by 3 points. And
Oh,
I wonder. He loves being on scene. He loves, you know, helping, and and the action, the adrenaline, you know, the accomplishment you get from saving people or houses, or you know anything. So I can't really see him as a desk job.
yeah.
I don't think he won't last very long as a desk job. I could be wrong, but
Yeah.
he still loves. A lot of people, I've heard other guys say, well, it's the adrenaline, you know,
Right. The
getting
rush.
that call, and yeah. So
Yeah.
they get upset if they miss a fire on their days off,
Oh my
that they
gosh.
couldn't help, they couldn't be there. So, but it's his choice if
Right.
he, take the job he wants.
So, if you could say one thing to other mothers who are just starting this journey and watching their child step into this dangerous career, what kind of advice would you give to them?
Support him as much as you can. Don't think about the bad part. Think about what he's doing and wants to do. Praise him, encourage him, and you're going to worry, but try to keep that to yourself, I guess. I don't know.
Mm.
Because that can build up too. I'm not sure. But you have to back him. You have to have his
Right.
back. Because he can't be running into a scene thinking, oh God, my mom's gonna, you know, I think they're mature enough to do that, but still, they need that encouragement and support,
Right.
Yeah. And don't
They
ever
don't need
ask,
right.
don't ever ask what was your worst call, or, don't, to any first responder, because that just, it's not a good thing. you
So
know,
you would say that they need that security and knowing that you're going to be okay and that you're going to be there to back them, and they don't need that second guessing or any kind of doubt in their mind while they
exactly.
are on a call.
Well, yeah, you've got to let that training come into action, not be worrying about what mom thinks or your wife or something. Um, I'm sure it happens, but they can't be in that space.
Right.
It has to go with their training and, what they feel is best for the situation.
Yeah, it's totally understandable. We don't want them to be
Yeah,
distracted.
yeah,
They need to be at the top of their game.
exactly. And, like first married couple and stuff like that, of course, I'm sure she'll be at the station a lot too, when
I can imagine.
they're, yeah. And who knows, they may be there when they get a full blown construction fire, or, you
Yeah.
know, so, but they don't need to be burdened down by our overthinking and worrying, which we do.
Yeah, I can imagine you can't help but to worry, being a
Yeah,
parent to somebody and having, this is your only son now, right?
right, right.
Because you lost a son prior to this,
Yeah, and he
unfortunately.
lost a brother, so
Yeah.
he was there. He was in his 20s.
Oh
My
my
son,
gosh.
no, yeah, he was like 24. His brother was 26. So, he was already well into the fire department, and I'm sure he's seen car wrecks, and, you know, but you don't want that haunting, or you don't want that even to spark in his head when he's on a call, you
Right.
know. So training has to kick in.
Right. You got to be focused.
Yeah,
Let your training take over and let
right. Till
yourself
it's a
kind of be.
habit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine what's going through their mind,
Can't
especially,
imagine.
if you're in the passenger seat and have, the LT, you know, he won't let me go on a ride along because I'd freak out with the running through the lights and the everything.
Yeah.
He says, "Mom, no, I'm not going to let you." So,
Right. So now more on a personal toll and the mental health aspect of it. Being a first responder's parent comes with a lot of stress. So how do you personally cope with that worry?
well, um, I just have to tell myself he knows what to do. I can't dwell on it. I can't, because probably give me another panic attack or something. I have full confidence he knows what to do. He's trained and trained. He has the experience. Uh, so I just have to go with that, you know, believe in him and his crew.
Okay.
Luckily, I don't have to worry about the equipment and the engines anymore. So I
Right.
don't wish that on anybody. It shouldn't happen. But,
Right.
but
I personally struggle with panic attacks, and I'm on medications for that, which is very important, especially with the line of work that I'm doing.
yeah,
If I wasn't on those medications, it would put other lives at risk.
yeah.
Um, so
I,
it
well,
was hard for me to accept that there was, something was going on, and I didn't want to go to the doctors to manage it,
well, I'm
but I
glad you
realized
did.
to.
Yeah. I mean, I had panic attacks where I was frozen. So
Yeah.
I was on meds for a long time, and, you have side effects from it, but And luckily I can control myself. It's 10 years. It's been 10 years. So,
Yeah.
you know, hopefully I've learned to calm down before it gets to that point.
Right.
And dwelling about it, his safety and everything else, it's not going to change anything.
No.
I had to go, to a lot of therapy to realize I can't, just because I'm worrying about something or freaking out, it's not going to change it. So,
Right.
yeah, it took a while.
I can imagine.
And I'm sorry you're going through it.
It's just, like I was telling you earlier, the compound traumas, because I went through a lot of childhood traumas.
Uh,
They were all compounding and just throughout my life, and it just come to a head, and it just exploded, and it kept
yeah.
progressively getting worse and worse and worse to where I couldn't handle it anymore,
Well, I'm
where I
glad
had
you
no
went.
idea that something was wrong. I couldn't.
Yeah. Well, it wears you out. It
Yeah.
takes a toll on your body and your relationships, on everything. So I'm
Yeah.
glad you went and got some help. A lot of people think, oh, I can handle it, but there's nothing better than letting it out and talking to somebody. Or so what if you need meds for a while?
Right.
If it gets you through, it gets you through, and that's what you need.
Right. You
So,
know, since we're talking about mental health and stuff, you had mentioned yourself, if you don't mind talking about it, you had mental health struggles yourself. Has being a firefighter's mom made those challenges harder?
well, it was basically the loss of his brother. That brother.
Hmm.
But luckily, I got help. You know,
Yeah.
and of course, Joe was always there for me and my husband, and they weren't going to let me continue suffering. I went. They sent me to therapy. I went away. I saw a therapist, pretty regularly, and Joe didn't like it when I was on those meds. He said it made me kind of spacey. I mean, I was on some strong meds, and I've weaned off of them, luckily.
Hmm.
But he was very supportive. But worrying about him could just bring me back because I do overthink. Yeah, still a little bit.
Right.
But I can't do that. I just can't because, like I
Right.
said, it's not going to change anything. It's just going to eat me up and make me neurotic, kind of. So
Yeah.
if you have to do the deep breaths or, you know, which really helps, I found, holding it in and focusing on that. But they
Right.
say something sour. I never tried that. But I had a lot of support, and I think that's what made a big difference.
Right. You had
Is
your
having
family
support.
support.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I don't know if I'm sure you're getting support with your fiance and everything else, but is doing these podcasts hard? I mean, or does it help?
Um. So I do have a pretty good support network.
Good,
I do have my fiance. Um, Fortunately, her parents love me to death, and I have them as support as well.
good. Yeah,
My
can't beat
father is
that.
in a different state, and yes, this podcast does help.
Oh, good.
It helps me to grieve my cousin's loss, and it helps me to know that what I am doing has a purpose and a meaning,
Exactly.
and I know that it's helping other people overcome obstacles or the problems that they've gone through or the injuries within their mental health.
Just being
You
able to
know,
talk about it. Yeah,
yes, I'm not a licensed therapist or psychologist or anything like that. I'm just your everyday guy,
yeah,
allowing people to express their feelings or themselves and telling their story
right. With
so that they don't have to
understanding.
feel like they're alone. Yeah. And
Yeah,
I understand somewhat of what trauma is.
yeah. Well, I'm glad it's helping you. And a lot of times you have to think, well, there's always worse, but I don't know. You do what you have to do to deal with it, and just understand that talking to somebody about it is the best therapy,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
So hopefully that gets better at the
I'm sure it
station.
will.
I hope so.
I'm sure it will. Oddly enough, I was invited to be a guest on a podcast, and it was called Beyond the Darkness, and it's all about trauma and PTSD and trying to overcome a lot of those things. And I was actually really looking forward to that because I felt like I needed that. I needed more of my story to get out
Right.
so that more people know that, I've been through all of these things and I'm still moving forward and I'm still trying to
Helping.
be successful and I'm helping people
Yeah,
with their
especially
problems.
with childhood trauma. I can, you know, you're not in control of your own life then. It's hard.
Right. Exactly. I'm definitely glad you had that support group, uh,
Yes.
dealing with your mental health issues. And, I hope you continue to have that support group because it's necessary and it's needed.
Yes, it
People to
is.
understand what you're going through. Um,
Anything
we're
to
here.
help.
We're here for you as your support group too.
Thank you. Well, I'm here for you. I mean, I can, listen. I'm a good listener. So,
Yeah. That's sometimes that's all people need is just
yeah,
somebody.
you have to let it out. You can't hold it in. It's going to
Right.
burst. So,
Yeah, we don't want that. And that's why we're trying to reach out to so many people and try to help them get over their struggles.
exactly. Before they
Uh,
snowball.
yeah, whether they're feeling it or not, those traumas can be compounding and they could come back and
Yeah.
haunt you later.
Well, you get to the point where you don't want to deal with society because you might get triggered, you know?
Yeah,
So definitely need to ask for help, or hopefully somebody to listen.
exactly. So, in closing here, if you could go back and tell your younger self something about what this journey would be, what would you say?
With the son as a firefighter or first
Sure.
responder, um,
Yeah.
I never realized how much they sacrificed
Hmm.
and how brave they are.
Yes.
Gotta love them.
Right.
Just support them and be proud, you know? If they know that, then it makes life easier for them, you know? Because you got their back. And I can't change it. So you got to just, support them and be there.
Right.
Of course, they don't want to scare you, but, hopefully there's somebody at the station, or, somebody. Even if he goes back to his junior instructor or something, if he needs to vet, so be it. They know what's going on.
Exactly.
Where, as a kid, you see a fire truck or a police going by, and you say, wow, that's loud. Look at that. But you don't realize what they're really sacrificing, their whole life,
Yeah.
So you have to admire and support them.
Definitely. So I know you talked about how proud you are of your son and
Yeah.
your worries, how much you love him. Uh, what would you like to say to him right now at this moment?
Sorry.
Okay. It's fine. Just let it out.
Well, he knows that I love him. Sorry. Um, I'd do anything for him, and I try to support him as much as I can. And I just pray he knows how proud I am of him. You know, everybody in the family is proud of. Just between the sacrifices and how brave he is. They're all first responders are so brave.
Yes.
And I don't think they get the respect they get. Well, veterans too. I can't, soldiers in the military, they're right up there. I just don't have one in the family, mom or dad. But you just got to be there. You just have to say, I love you, and I know you'll do the best you possibly can, and and I accept it.
Right.
So, and I don't even say to him, talk to somebody, because I, try to pretend that he won't suffer from anything. But that with what they see, some of it has to stick, and you hopefully you have somebody to talk to, or you have a way to vent or clear your head before it piles up. And a lot of that comes from, I think, family and, being supported.
Right.
So it makes a huge difference. But
One of the things I would hope that is if Joseph would listen to Anthony's story, and maybe he would get something out of that.
I'm sure he would. Yeah. I'll, he has all the information, and, I'll recommend that he does listen to it.
Because Anthony, he was the same way. He was the hard charger. He loved the whole bit. He was first one in. He loved the adrenaline. And,
yeah. Anthony was his brother's name, so that's kind of hard for me to hear. But I'm okay. No, I'm good. No, it's no big deal. I'm good. But he does a lot to stay in touch with, his crew, and they have dinners, and invite the family. It's it's a family thing. So, but I will mention to him to watch that. Even if the guy was a volunteer, I don't think there's any difference. I really don't, as far as bravery and the amount of support the community should give them. Our family, I really don't see any difference, because they're both risking their lives. Yeah.
It's the same job.
Yep. Sometimes volunteers, it's even, scarier, because they have to rush in their own vehicle. They don't, they may get the lights and stuff, but, they're not as loud, and they're not as flashy as a fire truck going by.
Right.
So, that's an extra risk for them just getting there. So
getting to the station to get ready.
Exactly.
To
drop everything you're doing, so I don't see any difference.
Yeah, they're all heroes in my book.
Yeah. They're brave enough to, do what it takes to save somebody else, to be there. So, and I'm sure the wives aren't thrilled about it, or the mothers, their parents are just as afraid for them. But you have to be proud. You have to let the pride take over. It has to be greater than the fear.
Right.
And it took me a while to figure that out. But especially when they're young, But we knew he was going to be a firefighter, so, I had a whole lifetime to prepare for it.
Right.
And be proud. So.
And hopefully he has a lot more to come, and he'll gain a lot more experience with his career, and he'll be able to help other people.
Yeah.
Show them the right path, and not like with some
Train them right.
departments. Yeah,
Yeah.
some departments that just don't care.
Well, they shouldn't be allowed
Yeah,
personally, but you know, their area probably needs something, and
right.
nothing isn't good. It's a thin line, I think.
Yeah,
You just have
fine.
to be proud and know that they'll do the best, that they've had the training to take over, you know. So that's
Right.
what you have to go on.
You're exactly right about that. Um, I definitely appreciate you being on here. It's been an honor.
Oh, my pleasure.
You know, it's
I
been
hope I can
emotional.
get Joe on. We can refigure how.
Yeah,
I
all he
should
has
have
to do is
said something. You know,
yeah.
he just assumed it was going to be a. Anyway, we'll get it taken
No,
care
I'm sure we'll get him on here, and I could talk to him, and all he has to do is click the link to join
of.
the
Yeah,
pre-interview and stuff, and it's basically the same thing that you're doing right now. It's nothing
right.
any different.
Just be honest and you know let it flow. it's
Exactly. Just let it out
only
and
it's only going to
speak
help
your mind.
others, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
And
what
that's
what
what.
you're going through is going to help others because they're going to relate to you, and then they're going to say, "Oh, if she's doing it, then that's my hope that I can do it."
Right. Well, then it's pretty much what the whole first responder, whatever you know department or station you're out of, that's basically what they're there for, and they have that calling.
Right.
So just need to take care of them.
Yes, we all need to stick together and take care of our first responders. They are very important to us.
Right.
Um, without them, we would be in a lot of trouble.
We'd all be walking around pretty crazy, I think. you know,
Yeah, we would be in a
fear.
lot of trouble. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So
every time you
it's my
see
hope.
one, you got to do your blessing or
Yeah.
hear one. I've
Yeah.
gotten, makes me feel better.
Right.
Well, thank you for having me. I mean, I hope I helped.
Oh, you have. I believe you have, and you're going to help a
Thank you.
lot of mothers out there, and hopefully a lot of wives kind of help understand the familial side of it. What you
Yeah.
guys go through and have to deal with, and help them understand what you know the firefighters go through. Hopefully they can communicate, and maybe the divorce rate may kind of dwindle a lot
Yeah.
more if
You
there's
have
a
to
lot more
support them.
information.
Yeah.
Yeah, show support, communicate. You don't have to give gory details. Just we had a bad day.
Yeah.
Just something simple.
Well, hopefully he
Show some
talks about
understanding.
it to. Sorry, I'm sorry. I didn't mean.
No, you're good.
They need to talk to somebody.
Yeah,
They can't be the tough guy and hold it all in because you need to vent and
exactly.
and it needs to be accepted that they should be able to vent. They don't want to
Yeah,
tell you everything, but you know, they need to let it out
yeah.
and be heard, I guess. Yeah, yeah, of course. So thank you.
Well, you're definitely welcome, and it was an honor for us to have you on here. I know how hard it is to have that sacrifice, and
Well, it's mostly
it's been a
pride.
blessing.
Yeah, very proud.
Definitely grateful for everything that you've done, and
Thank
for
you.
raising a wonderful son.
Well, I think he was born that way, but we encouraged it. So, you
Yeah,
can't, you have to encourage your kids.
yeah,
If there's a
exactly.
calling, there's a calling. So,
Yeah, if there's a calling, let them answer it.
exactly. Let it grow.
Yeah, you got to let it flourish because if it doesn't flourish, then
They'll resent you
yeah,
and they'll have this, I don't know, calling inside that's been plugged and it's not right.
right.
So, well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, we definitely thank you as well. God bless you. We
Thank
love
you.
you and your son for what you guys are doing and everything. You know, it's definitely been an honor.
Well, thank you. It's my privilege to, speak how it's been, and it brings me nothing but pride.
Exactly. Exactly.
Thank
And
you.
we're on TikTok, so if you ever need to speak out or something, you need to say something, we can always reach out to us through
All
TikTok
right,
or
that's
something.
how I found out about you guys. I think it's great. I hope they don't shut it down, because, it has this crazy side, but it has its good side too.
Yeah,
So,
we're trying to use that for the good.
right. Yeah.
You know,
Well, thank you.
you're very welcome. It was a pleasure talking to you, uh, everybody. Once again, this is Maria. Her son is a full-time firefighter. Let us all give her our blessings and her support. And again, we appreciate everything that you've done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a
All right.
wonderful evening.
Okay, you too.
Alrighty.
All right. Take care.
You too.
All righty. Bye bye.
Bye. 8158 podcast, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. Tune in for our next episode. Will be coming next week. Every Wednesday we have a new episode, so please stay tuned and check out all of our new upcoming episodes. Thank you for joining us on 8158 Stories of Sacrifice. Every story we share is a tribute to the courage and resilience of first responders and their families. If this episode impacted, encouraged, or inspired you, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who supports first responders. Follow us on all social media platforms at 8158 Podcast for updates. 8158 Stories of Sacrifice is a team effort. Rico brings the stories to life through casting, writing, original music, and editing. Brianne Shipley as production manager, handling booking, social media, graphics, promotion, marketing, website management, and logo design. Please visit our website at 8158podcast.com. For questions, collaborations, or to share your story, our email address is contactus@8158podcast.com. Until next time, let's continue to honor the legacies and remember the sacrifices of those who serve, every brave man and woman on the front lines, protecting and defending us all. This is Rico signing off and honoring 8158.